Welcome to the final edition of Oh God, What Now? Of the Conservative era. The longest political ordeal in human history, by which I mean the campaign, not the podcast, is finally over. And now all we need to do is get out and vote. For our Election Day edition, not governed in any way by Ofcom regulations, listeners, what have we learned from the campaign? Did the campaign make any difference? What can we expect from Starmer's first few weeks, and where do the Tories go from here? Plus, a special extended But Your Election emails where we answer a big load of your questions. With me today, two regulars who will also be joining us for our all-night YouTube stream on election night from 10 p.m. Search for us on YouTube to find our channel and watch it. Hannah Fearn writes about housing and the public realm for The Eye, The Observer, and publications far and wide. Hello, Hannah. How are you?
Hello, Andrew. I am very excited.
You are vibrating with excitement. It could not be more exciting. Are you looking forward to being up all night on YouTube as well?
I am. I'm already stacking up my Coke Zero.
This is what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Now, in the normal, ordinary world, what did you make of the splenetic reaction to Keir Starmer saying he likes to make time for his family after 6 o'clock on a Friday, like some lazy wokester? Is Grant Shapps right when he says that Vladimir Putin will therefore nuke us at 1 minute past 6?
Obviously not. Oh, what a weird area to go in on as your final attack line. It is a really daft angle from the Tories. Yeah. But Luke Trill from More in Common says something quite interesting about Starmer's response that I think actually on balance I agree with, which is that it might be one of the only sort of verbal missteps that he has made in the whole campaign. So Starmer kind of came out and defended that time he has with his family, said it's important to switch off. That's obviously true. And while I think people will understand that urge, there will be a lot of people who feel that they don't have that opportunity, that whatever role they're in, if they are someone who works really long shifts, that they feel like they don't have enough time for their family, that people who are in white-collar jobs, and this is the important faction, I think, in terms of the demographic. People who are constantly expected to be on their phone replying to emails, often almost 24 hours a day. I've been in that scenario in the past, working for certain bosses, that I won't mention by name.
My ears are burning here. Hang on a minute. I don't send that many WhatsApp messages.
It's not you. But I do think that there is this culture that we have created in British workplaces that feels like you can never step away and there's no time that is your own. And so people are going to feel that that's, well, hang on a minute, I agree with him, but I don't have that time and he's the Prime Minister. So I think that there is a way he could have handled it better, which is just to simply front up the kind of that he thinks it's really important. And as a government, he's going to kind of make it clear that work is something that should fit around family life as well. Yeah. And also the cultural side, his wife is Jewish, they have Friday night dinner, to front that up as well, especially given the history of anti-Semitism in the party and how he's dealt with that. That would have been an excellent way to respond. And he didn't quite lean into that, and so that was a bit of a shame.
Yeah, and it's not like he said he'd knock off at 6 o'clock every day, which Grant Shapps seemed to imply. He'd be like, sorry, mate, in the middle of negotiations, clocking off, ka-ching.
Really weird to say that ending at 6 on a Friday night is a part-time position. I've actually written a piece for The Eye this week about the push towards part-time hours. A quarter of people now don't work 40 hours a week. So it is a bit strange to suggest that just not working Friday night out of 7 is part-time.
Yeah. Also with me is the Leeds Westminster editor, political journalist, Zoe Grünewald. Hello, Zoe. How are you doing?
Very, very well, thank you.
Glad to hear it. Now, the Sun has finally woken up with less than a day to go and realised that there's an election on, and then endorsed Starmer with an excuse for a bad football front page saying time for a new manager. Is this quite as seismic as it used to be?
No, I don't think it particularly is, because we already knew which way the polls were pointing. At this point, people kind of assumed either the Sun wouldn't endorse anybody, or perhaps they might come out with a last-minute endorsement, which is what they did. I don't think it's going to move any public opinion. This is a case of them trying to catch up with where the polls are, so that they can continue to say it's the Sun that won it, when quite clearly it isn't. Yeah,
it's quite ignominious, isn't it, really, for a paper that wielded such power in the past. I mean, it was never fully the Sun what won it, but it had huge influence. I mean, on our companion podcast, Paper Cuts, it's been a running joke for 6 weeks that the Sun is just avoiding politics and pretending there's nothing on. Is it just like finally Rupert has kind of twitched on his hospital bed and gone, Starmer?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we know that there's been this sort of to and fro with the Sun and the Labour Party for many different reasons. But one thing particularly about Keir Starmer is obviously he was Director for Public Prosecutions during the phone hacking scandal. And that has touched a number of Sun journalists and, of course, Rebecca Brooks as well. well. So there was a sense of, I think, actual personal animosity towards Keir Starmer particularly. And, there's also a group of Labour politicians and their advisors who don't particularly want to do any work with the Sun, but who have, sort of been dragged kicking and screaming to do so. So it's definitely been this weird, tense relationship where they feel like they need the Sun and the Sun feel like they need the Labour Party, but neither actually want to work together. And actually, if you read the leader that accompanies the endorsement, it's so resigned. It's so annoyed. It's just like, the Tories need a time in opposition. Reform, they're not going to win. Lib Dems can't stand watching Ed Davey run around being fired out of water cannons. So I guess we will go for Keir Starmer, but don't you worry, we'll be watching him. That's basically it.
Yeah, I like the person on Twitter who said that the first thing Starmer should do on day one is say, "Good morning, everybody. Leveson 2 is go. Bingo. Too late now."
I saw someone on Twitter say that this will bring the Liverpudlians back to the Sun, and I thought, what a load of nonsense.
It will not. Not wild horses wouldn't do that. Zoe, you've been doing shoe leather journalism for the Lead in Warrington. How was that? Warrington South is knife-edge Tory, isn't it?
It is. So it's a really interesting place, and one of the things that was really clear when I was in Warrington and I was talking to locals and I was talking to candidates is that in many ways Warrington could be a really divided town. It's between Manchester and Liverpool, so there's lots of different football teams that they support. It's dual county, half of it's in Cheshire, half of it's in Lancashire. It's also a hub of many different manufacturing things, so wire, textiles, gin, nuclear, and it's been divided on political lines. So Warrington North has always been a safe Labour seat, but Warrington South has very much been a swing seat. But now it looks like it's going to reconcile and they're both going to become Labour again. And it was really interesting talking to the locals in Warrington. There's definitely a sense that it's going to go Labour, but really the overwhelming feeling was that they were just so disappointed with politicians from Labour, from the Conservatives, across the spectrum. There was just this feeling of they don't listen to us, they don't care. The people who are going to vote Labour would say they're voting Labour, but most of the people who were 2019 Tory voters were either undecided or they were very sort of annoyed about the fact that they had to vote Labour.
Well, I've been doing my shoe leather journalism in Glastonbury, where the soul of Britain resides, and it was very different from 2017 when it was, Superman Corbyn t-shirts everywhere and chants of "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn." You would not have thought there was an election on. Really, really interesting, because there was a handful of little moments, like Cassette Boy. If you're familiar with Cassette Boy, just the fantastic cut-ups. They do a show every year, and their show really was, boot on the throat of the Conservative Party, a field full of people chanting "fuck off" at pretty much every Conservative figure you can possibly imagine. But other than that, it was weirdly kind of disconnected from the whole thing. Neither was it particularly kind of aggressive towards Starmer. There wasn't a kind of, why is he not coming, particularly on Gaza? Why is he not coming out on Gaza? The kind of Owen Jonesite analysis of Keir Starmer was also strangely absent. The left field tent where all the political debate happens seemed to be about individual cases, the small boats issue, housing. Yes, Israel Gaza was a big thing. There was one bit about the election, pretty good bit with Stephen Bush, but not. I was genuinely surprised for what is a hugely political festival and what is a hugely significant turning point for Britain, that it didn't really feature that much, apart from some kind of ritualistic "fuck the Tories" stuff.
Did it make you slightly nervous about the youth vote? Although I say that knowing that Glastonbury is quite middle-aged now.
I am more than quite middle-aged, so I have learned through bitter experience not to depend on the youth vote, because I wish it wasn't true, but young people just do not vote, and I wish we could get them to vote more. But we saw it in the the Brexit referendum. Not that young people voted massively out of line. It's just that older people voted more. Young people voted perfectly in line with what elections, the way that they had voted in previous elections. But older people really, really did turn out, and they determined the switch on that. I always felt that the Corbyn thing at Glastonbury was really dangerous, because when your politics is about fashion, what do we know about fashion? It goes out of fashion. Nothing stays in fashion forever. And you will always have, basically politics is a minority sport for the likes of us. And mass movements, they can move the dial, but they're very, very fleeting. So I did, while I found it strange to be in the one place in the country that didn't seem to be kind of going insane about the election, it was almost the sense that like people there think, well, we know which way it's going. It's not going to be perfect. It's maybe not going to be the fantastic, here's the full menu of everything you ever wanted sort of dream election, but it's kind of going in the right direction. So, yeah, kind of, no news is good news.
Turnout will be the one to watch, really, won't it?
Turnout, yeah, but, we'll be talking a little bit about that later in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, 42 days, God knows how many miles travelled. A soaked Sunak at number 10, D-Day, Ed Davey on a surfboard, Tories gambling on the election dates, Ed Davey on a bungee jump, Davey falling into Windermere, and it all culminates in Sunak announcing today that his favourite dinner is sandwiches. Who even has sandwiches for dinner?
5-year-olds.
Yeah. For all the hours of coverage, the polls have barely moved, with the Tories stuck at 20% behind Labour, the Lib Dems on around 10%, and only Reform shifting from about 11% to about 16% after Farage's return. And everyone's messages have remained stubbornly the same too. The Tories pushing their dubious claim of a £2,000 tax rise, Labour pushing change. The only change there in the Tory messaging is, of course, the arrival of supermajority. So what was the campaign all for? Would we have got the same result if we just voted straight after Sunak had put his jacket on the radiator to dry off? Hannah, it is a really weird feeling to be on the edge of a genuinely historical moment, the potential end of a party even for a generation or more, and kind of not know how to feel. How do you feel?
A bit excited, a bit jittery.
Yeah.
Definitely, it does feel like we're on the cusp of something new. On social media today, a lot of people were asking, how does it compare to 97? So if you were around then, you younger people who weren't around then, shocking as it is, saying, how does it compare? And I was thinking about it. For me, it does feel less exciting, but then I was 15 then, so nothing's as exciting as when you're 15. So is it just age? I don't know. There's less hope this time.
Yeah.
It's definitely about kicking somebody out rather than somebody winning and winning the argument. But there is more at stake this time, I think, much more. And so that's why I feel the kind of excitement / jitteriness that this matters, I think, more than any other election I've voted in.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably Brexit, of course, but this is now the chance to kind of set a new direction for the country for, it's not 5 years, it could be 15.
Yeah.
So, especially with the prospect of Lib Dems in second place, I don't think that's likely. We'll come to that. But, excited, I think. I think excited, let's say that.
I am old enough to remember. I was 30 in 1997, and the difference this time is there was a lot of excitement and a lot of kind of hope at the time, as you say. But what there is now is absolute hatred of the outgoing government. Back then, it was like taking a knackered horse to the glue factory. It was like, we're clearly done.
Yeah, they were exhausted
mired in corruption.
and done.
Yeah, they're done. But this lot are loathed in the country. This is the surprise to me. I've never really seen it before. And I think that it's like we might not have the hope that we had in 1997, but we've got the vengeance,
the anger,
which
for sure.
is really, really
I mean,
surprising.
there is jeopardy. So people are saying, where's the excitement in it? How can you be excited? We all know it's a foregone conclusion. The jeopardy is in, will it be a complete wipeout?
Yeah.
An era-defining wipeout that means the right has to completely re-identify itself, or will it be something much more moderate? Will there be a Lib Dem surge? What role will the Lib Dems play? What does tactical voting really mean on this scale? We know that 97 tactical voting did play a part, but nowhere near as significant a part as it will play today, Thursday, because the rage, as you say, is there.
Zoe, how are you feeling? As a representative of the young people.
I'm so excited. And I actually keep getting quite emotional as well. And I don't know if that's just because I'm a political nerd and that's actually, really embarrassing. But I am getting quite, it really feels like we're on the brink of something really interesting.
Are we standing on the edge of glory like Lady Gaga?
It feels like we're standing on the edge of glory. But, I mean, my sister recently had a baby, so I've got a 3-week-old niece, and I was reading this great piece by John Elledge, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, in The Guardian today, about all the things, or The Guardian yesterday, about all the things that the Tories did, which have been terrible for the country. And I was thinking, I really hope my niece grows up with a progressive Labour government that brings back all those opportunities that were taken from us.
Yeah. This morning, Wednesday, we're recording on Wednesday, senior Tories seem to just throw in the towel entirely. Mel Stride told the Today programme, Labour is heading for the largest majority any party has ever achieved. You're not supposed to say that, Mel. You're really like letting the cat out of the bag. We are very familiar with the idea that they are doomed. But Zoe, as a Westminster insider who knows things better than we do, exactly how doomed are they? I mean, there's the idea going around that even the MRP polling might be too optimistic and they're going to come in under 60 seats.
Yeah, so the FT said they think it could be somewhere between 44 seats and 146 seats. I mean, that is really, that could
That's
be
quite
really...
a big spread, though, isn't it?
It is quite a big spread. The thing that is really significant and that actually nobody was talking about before the last sort of 3 weeks is that Ed Davey could be the leader of the opposition. That the Liberal Democrats could possibly, and this is a big possibly, actually become the second largest party in
bungee jumping into Prime Minister's question time or doing the Mission Impossible thing above the dispatch box.
Yes, precisely. And I think that is extraordinary. And actually, I don't think the Lib Dems know quite how to deal with that piece of information that they've been given.
Not prepared, no.
And that could be, in some ways, that could be great because look at how progressive, our Parliament could be. And all the issues that could be actually now a priority under a Labour government with a Lib Dem opposition. For example, health and social care could be a really big thing. But it also could be quite bad in that it's still going to be quite a small opposition party and they're going to be quite unprepared. It's been a long time since they've been in government, but it's actually, they've never really been properly in government. So
yeah, I mean, I've got sort of old school Labour mates, all sorts of Labour centrists, old Blairites with a tonty tattoo, say, well, actually, it's really bad because you need to have a functioning right wing party. You need to have a place where those ideas can be, and also you need the kind of whetstone to make your own ideas, to sharpen up your own ideas. And I kind of thought, but I just want them obliterated.
Yeah.
I want those ideas to have a different home.
I would say though, with Mel Stride, I think it is unlikely that the Lib Dems are going to be second party. I obviously can dream about it too, and I have these thoughts that, this could be the great new era, but I do think it's quite unlikely, though it's within the realm of possibility. The reason that Mel Stride is coming out saying those things is not because he's throwing his hands up and saying, right, game over, I've given up now, forget it, I'm just going to go down the pub. He knows that by saying that, he's bringing some energy to a whole bunch of people, the undecideds, the lazy, also the base,
the core Tory vote, the lazy,
and the reform swingers. That's a whole group of people.
An image, isn't
you should have seen the face on Zoe then. The pampas grass.
Not in that way. These are all people that they need to get out if they're going to make sure that Davey has absolutely no chance of being leader of the opposition. So that's a calculated statement.
But is he also, and I think a lot of this polling and a lot of particularly the Telegraph and Mail front pages about this, lowering expectations so violently that when they come in with 120 seats, which would otherwise be seen as an absolute caning, they can say, well, look, it's not quite as bad as it was. If we didn't have this terrible Prime Minister, we would have done a lot better. There's still appetite for Conservative ideas in the nation.
Precisely. They will now be doing expectation management, which we know they will do not only to make themselves look better, but also to make Labour look weaker than we originally thought. The only thing I say about that is the last two times they tried to do worst case expectation management, they did worse. They did worse than
That's true.
that. But I think the real thing for the Conservative Party is it doesn't really matter how many seats they get in some ways. What matters is what happens to the party after. And this isn't all going to go away, when they are in opposition. The party's going to have a massive reckoning over what went wrong. And they're still going to be likely pushed by Reform and Nigel Farage. There's going to be the bids for Tory leader. They're going to have to deal with some really, I think, traumatic Portillo moments, which are going to be great for us.
They're going to be brilliant.
But, actually, in many ways, the chaos for the Conservative Party starts on the 5th.
Oh no, they're going to have chaos without Ed Miliband. Oh no, how awful. So is it really just about the Conservatives forgetting about resisting Labour and about trying to just resist being taken over from within by Reform?
I think, they definitely, Hannah's completely right that they definitely want to capture all those voters who were 2019 Tory voters who were flirting with voting for Reform because they want to teach the Tories a lesson, and they're saying, you'll teach us a lesson so great that you'll live to regret it. Please don't lend Reform your vote. But there is also something about resisting the reform surge from within, because we know there are MPs in the party who are taken by reform. I mean, Suella Braverman's come out quite strongly in the last couple of weeks, batting for Nigel Farage in a way that I'm sure if I wouldn't, Rishi Sunak, I'd be absolutely hopping mad about.
If Sunak had any power, he'd be withdrawing whips and kind of, and if he was in the middle of an election campaign. What do we think of Farage's actual campaign? Because he's proven to be really brittle and really querulous, and his sense of humour has proved very thin. Any reporting or proper kind of scrutiny is election interference. I'm reporting into the Electoral Commission. Obviously there's been just an ongoing shit show of the past behaviour of dozens and dozens of candidates. What do we think of the way of the performance of reform so far?
I think it's interesting. It tells you something about what will happen if they do win one or more seats, that they're used to being the kind of outsider poking the beast and poking from the outside. And then when it actually comes to the full glare of scrutiny, they fall apart. So I personally am quite hoping that Farage wins his seat, because I think he's almost neutralised by power.
But is he, though? Because we have not seen the poll numbers fall since he came back into the fray. And every time somebody turns out to be a horrible pub racist or a weirdo conspiracy theorist, the kind of core reform vote, such as it is, goes, yeah, that's what I like. Because I'm like that. I see myself.
I think the core reform vote does just not care sufficiently. But I also think that the people at large generally do care, and they will fall out of love with someone who's got the full, under the full glare of that scrutiny. I mean, we'll see.
I think there's also something to be said about when you become an MP, you actually have to do the job. So there will be constituency work taking up Nigel Farage's time.
Or do you?
Well,
he did
or
fuck all when he was in the European Parliament.
Absolutely. But then you have to answer to your constituents to some extent. And Clacton, one of the reasons he is so popular is because Clacton is quite a deprived area. There's lots of disillusionment. There's lots of disenfranchisement. If he is just being Nigel Farage, the god of the right, and not actually making life better for the people of Clacton, they may well turn against him and vote him out next time. I mean, it's wishful thinking. I'm also hopeful that actually once you bring the anti-establishment figure into the establishment, it does neutralise some of their power. And we saw that a little bit with George Galloway. I think he has definitely had the spotlight taken off him a little bit.
I'm not so confident, because what we've seen is, never mind bringing the anti-establishment character into the establishment. We had a prime minister who behaved like an anti-establishment character and seemed to get away with it for a brief period.
For a brief period, he definitely did. But what is happening today, tomorrow, whenever you're listening to this, is the revenge. Yes. People don't stand for that for very long. And I do agree with you, actually. So I think the people of Clacton want immediate change, and if they see that Farage is off supporting Trump and on a stage over in California or Texas or something, instead of looking after their interests at home, if he's elected, I think that they will be rightly pissed off.
Yeah, I would say, if you compared to George Galloway again, a lot of what some of the people who voted for George Galloway and Rochdale wanted was a voice for Gaza. And he can still do that voice for Gaza. You can, as an MP, you can do that fairly easily. You can stand up in debates, you can lodge questions, you can post on social media. It's much more quantifiable. What Farage is selling is a kind of indescribable hodgepodge of hope and standing up to the establishment. It's actually a lot harder to quantify, and I wonder if that would mean the demographic are less forgiving.
Hannah, the standard of the campaign itself, from both politicians and media, I think, has been really low. I can't remember a single thorough exploration of a policy. All we've got is endless reiteration of black holes and where's the money coming from.
Yeah, I don't think that's entirely fair, actually. Okay. I think that there has been some excellent reporting, but it hasn't been in places like the Mail or the Telegraph and so on.
I wasn't expecting it to be there.
It's not been serving most of the population. Zoe's been doing some great stuff, as have I, and the lead. It has been left to the more marginal titles, but there has been good stuff out there. But I think also the Tories are entirely to blame for this, where there is a bit of a black hole of policy. It's the pratfalls that the Tories have been committing have dominated the agenda, which is a shame because it has taken space away from that policy debate. And the thing is, as a journalist, they are the bigger stories. That is, you're never going to not report some stupid thing that Sunak's done, like going on Titanic quarter trip.
Yeah.
Because it's a great line. As a journalist, I'm afraid that will always take the space. But the problem is those political mishaps then do take up coverage time. And that is a shame. I do think it's been a shame.
That's kind of what I'm saying. It's like we have not got in, there's nothing on climate, that has been here at all. Looking at Labour's green policy has been entirely on it's another black hole of spending.
I think
there's been little explaining going on.
I think climate has been a deliberate tactic from Labour to try and keep away from it a bit because they know it's a tough area for them because of their decision about the 28 million, and the Tories really want to turn that into an identity thing, like a woke war agenda. So they've tried to keep away from it. I would say I think Beth Rigby's one-on-ones in Grimsby were probably the best we got in terms of detail about things like the NHS and private schools. There was some real interrogation there, but of course only a percentage of people watch that. I really get fed up on the black holes thing, just to go off on a slight rant. The fully costed black holes lines, they're the most frustrating part of any discussion for me, because the whole point of a manifesto is to create a set of promises that set out an agenda for government, a vision and a plan. The yes does include income and expenditure and an end point. This is where we want to take the country to, and this is how we'll do it. But it doesn't have to have every 1 and 0 added up, because here are some things that were never fully costed. Allowing a load of Ukrainian refugees to come here because it's the right moral thing to do because conflict has broken out. A pandemic.
Yeah.
These things happen. Natural disasters, conflicts, pandemics, they occur. That's the business of government to then respond. The idea that somebody has to come into government not knowing what's going to happen in the next 5 years, because none of us do, and be able to add every 1 and 0, it's farcical and it really drives me nuts.
Zoe, has anybody in the Tory party had a good campaign, do you think?
Oh, I had to think about this question for a long time. Right, so the only person who has got what I would see as positive recognition for their part in the campaign is Theresa May. She was out campaigning for a Tory candidate, I think in Wales, and someone captured her on their Ring doorbell saying, you're not in at the moment, but I'm Theresa May and I'm just going to put a leaflet through your door. And to be honest, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, she's just campaigning for a Conservative candidate. It's not really groundbreaking. But when you compare it to Boris Johnson, who turned up at the last minute and
went on holiday and then turned up at the last minute
and just did a performative Boris Johnson rally. Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, all the other Tory leaders who have seen so obviously self-involved in the way that they've politicked. I think it's quite refreshing to remember that Theresa May has always stuck around on the backbenches. And she's still a Conservative and she's presided over some really questionable Conservative policies. But she does seem to be one of the only Tory leaders who seems to have a modicum of public service in her bones. And I think it was quite nice to see that some of them do still stick around even when the party's going to shit.
Is Sunak going to resign on Friday?
I don't think he will. I think he will. Well, I think he might, but I don't think he'll go immediately. I think he might try and do the thing of, I'm going to stay here until there's been a leadership contest. I'm going to, we're going to do some soul searching and figure out where it's gone wrong. There was, I think was it Michael Howard who was did stay on for 6 months?
I honestly can't even remember.
Yes, I think he did. I'm dredging that up from some memory banks there.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And there's, some suggestion that Rishi Sunak might want to do that and talk about, we really need to do some soul searching as a party. We really need to steady the ship. It's best if I stay in the role and then the rest of us. But actually, I think the defeat is going to be so monumental. You can't not attribute that to the leadership. I think you have to go. I understand the perspective of, if I go now, the party will be in total chaos, which is why I think he might just stay while there's a leadership.
Yeah, I was not under any circumstance suggesting that he might not resign at some point. I just wonder how early on Friday it might be.
Yes,
9, 10, 11.
He may well get resigned, mightn't he, by his own local constituency. It's not beyond the realms of possibility.
That's a good point. And my understanding of that is that the king would then have to formally withdraw him as Prime Minister.
Oh,
and who becomes Prime Minister? Shit. Maybe he just rings somebody up at random.
Yeah, Keir Starmer.
Yeah,
invite him to be but who would end up being, the acting leader? It could be David Cameron, because he's not got a seat to lose.
I just can't
He'd love that, wouldn't he?
Cannot handle this any longer. Hannah,
Don't worry, there's only a few hours to go. Just hang in there.
The conventional wisdom, Hannah, is that the parties need a period on the naughty step to come to their senses. Do the Tories have anybody left to start that process of reflection?
It depends who ends up Portillo,
well, I mean, even
it?
with, you don't necessarily need to be an MP at the moment in order to start that conversation.
Oh, good point. Well, if people who may or may not survive, I think that Tom Tugendhat is a possibility from the kind of more centre-right gang. If Cleverly survives, possibly. But ironically, as I was saying, the only cabinet minister that we know who definitely will be there is David Cameron. And I do think he's going to end up playing a role in that discussion. I'm afraid to say. I think that's quite likely in terms of the stabilising bit.
So get rid of the House of Commons. Time to end the disastrous
Depressing.
democratic experiment.
It will only be a part player while the party reorganises itself. But I do think that that's likely.
Can we think of any high points of the campaign? Things that made us feel better about politics, Britain, watching the telly, things like that?
Everyone struggles.
Well, I was listening to LBC yesterday and I was hearing a lot of people ringing up. And this was Ian Dale's show, so we know pretty sort of centre-right. People ringing up. Everybody was defending Keir Starmer's right to spend time with his children.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's
Which
good.
I thought, I was surprised. I thought you'd get somebody ring up and say, he's Prime Minister, should be being Prime Minister 24/7. But everybody said, I want a Prime Minister who respects and values his family. I want a Prime Minister who's well rested. I want a Prime Minister who values work-life balance. Everybody. So I found that quite nice because I just didn't know if that was the state of public opinion. I'm glad it is.
That's quite cheering. I remember, though, being quite annoyed when Sherry Blair got pregnant when Blair was Prime Minister. I was like, what are you playing at? You should be being Prime Minister all the time. What the hell do you think? What do you think this place is?
Policing his sex life.
Yeah. Come on.
I think I've been quite both depressed, but also the flip side is pleased by the ascendancy of Angela Rayner.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about her being potentially Deputy Prime Minister, and I've been banging on about this all week. The fact that she's became a grandma at 37 is really, really significant. This country has virtually no social mobility. It's flat on the floor.
Yeah.
We have a real problem with that. And having her there as a visible sign of the fact that someone can take their life from 16 and pregnant, living with a mother who can't read, to Deputy Prime Minister by the age of 44 is fabulous. And it means a lot it signals a lot about what this incoming government could achieve for the country. And that's given me great hope. And she looks like she'd be an awesome night in the pub.
She looks like she'd be very, very good fun.
I really would like to go out
I like the fact that the Tory attack on her was simply to take her promising what sounded like a very good deal for working people, put it in black and white, and put a moustache on a beret on her as if it made her French. This was and everybody's looking at it and going, that sounds fantastic, and you look just like a bunch of children for attacking her and putting a moustache on her.
The weirdest thing about that was that it gave her space to sell their policy.
So why are you letting Labour sell its own policy and make it look cool by being in black and white?
But it's interesting. These things those points are linked because one of the things I think the Conservatives have completely misunderstood, and it's what you said right in your icebreaker, Hannah, it's just that people want space to spend time with their families and they don't want to be working for nothing. They want to be spending time with their families. They want to be paid properly. They want to feel like they're valued at work. And I hope that's something that the Labour Party really are going to take seriously.
For me, it was the video of Ed Davey looking after his son, his disabled son, which is like, you're probably not, you may be the leader of the opposition if you're really, really lucky, but you seem to be ultimately a really sound guy. And it was just nice to see that in the context of politics. Just to wrap this bit up, what are your gut feels, panellists, about the size of the Labour majority? Is it going to be enormous or just vast?
Smaller than the MRP predictions, but bigger than 1997.
Huge.
Humongous.
Biggest Labour majority ever.
How? Okay,
Both
Mel
those things
Stride.
can be true, though.
Yes.
I think 450.
Right, okay. And the Conservatives reduced to what? So I'm going to ask you next week. So you said this.
I'm obviously going to be wrong. I just really want to put the biggest case scenario because then we can have some disagreement on the panel. 60 seats.
I think that's unlikely. I think the Tories are going to make 100. They might even make 115.
I'm saying 130 because we can't have nice things.
Okay.
But Throughout the election campaign, we've been doing extra But Your Email segments with questions from our Patreon backers. And for the final one before the vote, we are going to go overboard and devote a whole section of the podcast to it. There is a lot to talk about. Martin Greenaway asks, is there a danger with all of the talk about supermajorities and Tory wipeouts that we could be disappointed with anything less and overlook just how spectacular a result a 100-seat majority for Labour would be after 2015, 2017 and 2019? This is just what we were talking about. We have been so spoiled, Ambassador, you spoil us with Conservatives on 40 seats, that we may look at a genuinely amazing result for Labour and say that's a bit mediocre.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this, expectation management. I mean, the Tories now are going to say it's going to be really, really bad for us. So anything they get that is better will look good. Either way, it's, 99.99%, I am certain there's going to be a Labour majority. And the thing that is going to be really important is how consequential the policy is and how many evil Tories are wiped out. Look for joy in those individual losses, I would say. That would make you feel better about the whole thing.
The polls haven't moved, and there have been so many of them. Yeah. So I think that we can go into it with some calmness of spirit.
Okay.
Let's look for the exit poll. Can't wait.
Richard Cohen, how and why has the Tory campaign been so bad? They've obviously put money and effort into some fairly well-produced stuff, but it's just horrible and cringy. Is it just not aimed at me? Well, Richard, we don't know what kind of a person you are, but probably it's not aimed at anybody.
Because he listens to this podcast.
Yeah, well, you listen to this podcast, yeah.
I think there's a few reasons. One is the lack of energy and the ability for them to attract really great talent because they're on the downward curve, and that's just not where the talent goes. So that's why Labour are so good right now. They've got loads of younger people who are coming in, who are excited to be, there for this pivotal moment. So they haven't got the people in the room. I also think there's something about John Elledge's previous point about the client press, and that, it hasn't been good for the Tories that they have bought some of the press so close to them that they no longer have any connection with reality and the real audience, that they don't really understand what people want.
It's playing really well with Cheryl Jacobs and Zoe Strumpel. It must be good.
Exactly. Yeah. And then what's actually happened is that they don't know what people want, how they operate, how they think. So that has played into it. I think panic has led to some bad decisions as well.
Yeah.
I would agree with all of that, but I also think bad social media content gets shared. And
good point.
If you are quote tweeting the terrible Angela Rayner video, you are sharing that video over and over again. And if that converts 100 voters back to the Tories who go, oh, I don't like French unions, I just don't like that, I'll never like that, then to them that feels like a success.
I think the point that Richard makes here about cringy is actually it's quite important, because what they're telegraphing is they just don't get what Britain is like. They don't get the shared sense of humour. They don't get the set of priorities. And that ridiculous one about, the kind of the future when you wake up in 2 years' time and there's power cuts and the front page of the paper's called the Daily Tax. It's like, nobody believes this. But more than that, like the tone of it is it's like a really crappy CBBC thing. It lacks veracity and it doesn't sound like the voice of Britain.
I completely agree with all of that, but I would also say, it isn't aimed at you. The private school stuff has landed brilliantly with its audience. That's really got the Tory vote going. They are furious about that. So, everything that they've done around, Labour want to kind of take your right to educate your child in the way that you want, that's landed really well. So, yes, it isn't aimed at us either.
Sarah B., putting aside your own excellent work, thank you, Sarah, which are the podcasts which played a blinder at this election, and what happens to the podcaster once their own gang are in power?
I've loved electoral dysfunction. I think it's actually really come into its own during this campaign. They've been brilliant. They've been fun. Having Ryland Clark as a guest was absolute genius. Who knew he was silently political?
He's quite a smart guy as always, right?
Very clever guy, and he was a Jess Phillips stand-in. He's a Labour voter, but he fully talked about his political awakening and how he got really hooked around Brexit, and then kind of came to understand British politics in the light of that. And it's just fascinating to hear about someone's kind of political journey. So a great booking, and I've really enjoyed that.
Well, obviously, I mainly listen to Oh God, What Now? And the podcast.
Only Podmasters podcast.
Obviously. But I do quite enjoy the news agents. And the reason I enjoy the news agents is because it's daily and it's always the sort of big political issue of the day. So if there's something that's been going on and I've been distracted with something else, you know that if you listen to an episode of that, it will just completely catch you up on what's been said, who said it, the different perspectives. Yeah. And it's just a very good deep dive into what's happened that day.
Or you could listen to Paper Cuts instead. It's got the same stuff and loads of jokes. Just telling you.
Also, very quickly, on the rest of entertainment, there have been some brilliant short political sections which you wouldn't expect in there. One of them was about viewing habits, TV viewing habits and voter patterns. And what really fascinating thing was that the biggest switchers are the viewers of Clarkson's Farm, which have switched almost entirely from being Tory voters to Labour voters, which tells you everything about what's going to happen.
Troggy Oggy Oggy, possibly not real name, asks, how will the panel celebrate the, whisper it, end of the Tories? Not whispering it, end of the Tories! Yeah! We'll be hiking in the Alps for 2 weeks, stuffing ourselves silly with European beer, cheese and meat. That's what I like about European elitists. How will you be celebrating?
I will have 2 more weeks of work, and then I will be heading to Europe. I'll also be stuffing myself with European beer, cheese and meat. I'll be going to Berlin, Vienna and Slovenia.
Oh, very nice.
So very European.
Mm.
Well, I'm going to be obviously staying up all night to watch it for you guys, and then brilliantly staying the night in a hotel, not having to get my kids up in the morning. That is a holiday. I'll probably have brunch in the morning, and then after hitting a deadline over the weekend, I'm going to go see Block Party on Sunday. And I think that will be quite a spirited, fun affair. I imagine most people going to that will be equally pleased to see the back of a Tory government.
Well, my celebration will be I'm going to have some sausages because I'm rationing the sausages, and I'm going to be DJing at Ducky at the end of July. Look, Ducky, London's greatest club. I've got the coveted, 2 o'clock in the morning slot or something like that, but playing records and celebrating in a very Europhile way. Natalie Taylor, while I'm really looking forward to a change in government, fingers crossed, is anyone else disappointed that this will lead to a downturn in genius comedy memes about politicians you hate? I think this is a serious point because a whole lot of people are going to come in that you don't yet know who they are. They haven't created their public persona. You can caricature Keir and Angela Rayner, and to an extent Wes Streeting. Can you do very many other people?
The great thing, the only great thing about the 2019 general election is it brought in a load of Tories who just didn't think they had any chance of getting in, who then ended up saying some of the weirdest things in the House of Commons. So you had that, remember that weird rant about how Doctor Who, the female Doctor Who was turning men
I remember it.
into killing their wives and
Yes. I don't remember this.
Lots, and then fabulous. Of course 30p Lee, and you've had all these really strange interventions from the 2019 Tories who are going to lose their seats. And what we now are going to get is a load of Labour MPs who are actually very well vetted by Keir Starmer and are probably not going to say anything apart from absolutely what they're supposed to for a long time. So, it might be a bit boring.
Yeah, but
it depends if Reform get a couple of seats. We can definitely parody
if you want entertainment, go to the bloody circus. It's politics. I don't, we paid a high price for having Gullis chimpanzeeing his way around the Commons and 30p Lee and all the other loons. Fabricant is an hilarious end of the page figure. I don't want him anywhere near power.
I also think there's fun to be had sometimes in positive messages anyway. One of the funniest memes I found in this election was the one, there's like this kind of serious picture of Keir Starmer just with the word change underneath it. And then people are sharing it, saying this is what your dad says when he sends you to the corner shop for milk with a fiver. I'll enjoy those too. We can have some of those.
Finally, Liam Connolly. Imagine that in 30 years' time you are a historian. You are writing the definitive history book about the last catastrophic 14 years of Conservative rule.
Still possible.
Yeah. What one image would you choose for the front cover to sum up all of this awfulness?
I would select Boris Johnson being surprised with his birthday cake that he claims he knew nothing about on the 19th of June 2020, because that's my birthday too.
Oh, right.
And I was not sitting with my family. And it's emblematic of every screw-up during those pivotal years.
Yes, that's a pretty strong one. Zoe?
I think that's a really good one. I mean, I would maybe go for some kind of cartoon of them all the Tories as sort of farmyard animals with, pigs with their faces in the trough, but the trough is money and PPE contracts, and it's just a horrible cesspit of animals behaving badly.
I think I would have to go for the Boris Johnson zip wire thing, because not only was it, just so utterly lacking in dignity, it was stupid. It wasn't even that funny, and worse than that, it kind of showed, it telegraphed what he really believes the whole enterprise was about, which is just clowning. That the idea of a higher purpose had just gone. The idea of doing anything useful had gone. It was just there to be in front of the cameras, attention of any kind, hanging there looking like a bag of laundry. And the really, really detestable and hateful thing about it is it kind of worked. It kind of sold this putrid man as a good laugh, and it actually suckered a load of people. And I think that, there's Britain up there on a zip wire, no idea how to get down, looking stupid, the whole world looking on and not really laughing. And that's the end of the very last Oh God, What Now of the Conservative era, we fervently hope. We'll be back tomorrow with a live recording of our election night show at the Tabernacle in West London, and also a special aftermath show as well. Never let it be said that we leave you with nothing to listen to. Don't forget the all-night YouTube stream. Just search Oh God, What Now YouTube, or click the link in the show notes, subscribe and get the beverages in. You can watch us next to the BBC, Channel 4, Sky, whatever your news channel of choice is. Thank you, Zoe, for joining us for this special show.
Thank you.
And thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
The extra bit is coming for Patreon people, but first, here are the traditional shouts to some of our latest Patreon backers.
Hello, and a very happy Conservative Apocalypse Day too. Robert Newton, Wendy Grodentz, Maxim, Fraser Clark and Stephen Brewster.
Hello, many thanks and goodbye to all that. To Camilla Aziz Clausen, Ian, Sinead McQuillian, Nick Curry and Debbie.
And hello, and this is the dawning of a new era too. Daisy, Gary Palmer, Jonathan Wakeford, DC Generation X, more of a Marvel man myself, and Josh. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in a whole new world.